Ever wonder what it's like to win $1 million playing the game we love? Well, tonight's three guests have done it on the biggest stage in the biggest tournament, and they're here to tell you how they've done it and maybe help you get a little cash this year. Let's get to it.
Go district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offers the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? Welcome back to the district for another Thursday tailgate, and we got a huge one tonight. Our guest tonight, I apologize, I got the number. You know, once it gets over 6 digits, man, it's all the same to me. 500 grand, you know, $1 million. It all feels good, right, guys? It all feels good. Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome to Dom, Sean, and Nick. We appreciate you guys jumping on tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed meeting you guys out in Vegas this year. It was a lot of fun. These guys, they know how to have a good time and they know how to win leagues. So nice. That's a great combination for Vegas.
My kind of guys. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go around? We'll give you each a chance just to, you know, give your name, your handle, all that fun stuff so people can follow you guys on Twitter. And maybe just give us a quick taste of what it feels like to win that kind of money playing fantasy. Let's start with Nick. Nick came in late. I already talked to the other guys. Let's get Nick fired up here and ready to go.
Let's do it. Sorry, I missed your
No,
question.
sorry, brother. Just why don't you just share your Twitter handle and let the audience know what it's like to win $500,000.
Oh my God, such an unreal feeling. You know, with our team last year, we had a lead by 32 the last week, so our run was a little bit different than probably most because we had a comfortable lead going into the last week. So that last week was unbelievable run, and we locked it up by 53 points. And my Twitter handle is _ Nick Koss. I don't really tweet too much, but you know, I like to hop on Twitter a good amount of time, but I'm not really a tweeter.
That's why you got to tune in here, guys, into the district. That's why you get all the goodness. You might not share it on Twitter, but we're going to squeeze it out of them tonight. Right, Dan?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, Sean, I asked you. I'm going to keep you for last, okay? I'm still mad at you. Let's go to Dom. Dom, how did that feel, man? What's that weekend, like leading up to that weekend when you know how much money is on the line? How does that feel, man?
Hey JD, hey Dan, hey Chad, Don Barani.
We got your scratchy. We got aliens.
All right, I'm staying really still. Our truck, our headphones, I'm talking. But listen, that last weekend was maybe a fugue state. I had been in a fugue state for a long time. We were in first place from week 9 or so, and it was so surreal. It hadn't been processing yet. It's almost like you have to keep your head down. Just focus on those last lineup decisions, keeping your ear to the ground on the news.
Yeah, you know what, Dom, maybe try to...
I'm going to take the headphones off.
Yes, or even if you try to leave and come back, sometimes that'll fix it. Dom, or Sean, why don't we go to you, man? I asked you, I'm joking around, but dude, you're living the dream right now. Why don't you explain to the audience what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so, well, first off, my Twitter handle is at Sean _ Stutzman. And yeah, winning the $500,000 gave me the opportunity to actually follow my dream. I quit my job and have been playing poker and fantasy for a living ever since.
Bastard.
Trying to make the. Yeah, I know it's.
That's how it's done, though, man. That's how
I
it's
was
done,
gonna say,
right?
it's been an amazing ride. It's been a lot of fun, and I've been doing really well with it actually, which has really made it very fulfilling and very exciting for me, because I wasn't sure when I decided to make that move that it was going to work. So, but it's definitely worked very well so far, and we're gonna definitely keep going with it. So. Very exciting.
Good for you, Sean, man. I'm happy to hear you. I'm just teasing you, brother. You take risks, and when it pays off, when those risks pay off, man, does it feel good, right?
Oh, it's definitely, it definitely does. And it's been, like I said, I've been lucky to run good and have some pretty helpful people around me in the community around here. There's a good poker community in Buffalo, and definitely had some good help from some of the players, really kind of refining my game and getting better over the past 8 months or so, which has been a big deal for me for sure. So
there's a parallel there, I think, with poker and fantasy. I know, just being part of both worlds there's a good community in both realms. Dom, I know you really don't want to share all your tricks and tips and how to get that cash, but do we have a clear signal now?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay? I'm relying on the MacBook audio.
Perfect.
So no headphones. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, I mean, it felt great. I had actually just bought a house kind of coincidentally about 6 weeks or so before we won the prize money. So
that's confidence, boys. That's what you call confidence.
first time homeowner, some extra money in your pocket. I mean, you can imagine kind of where some of that went. And as far as how it felt, I mean, it was such a surreal run, having been in first place for over 2 months consecutively. Hadn't relinquished the lead. I mean, as far as I understand it, that's pretty unprecedented. That kind of makes sense to me. There was just something surreal about the whole moment, and even just coming down to the end and thinking you might have it, but it's still just not feeling real. I will say, just as a caveat to anyone listening out there, money's great, and winning the prize money and the glory is great, but it will not fix problems in your life. It won't necessarily change anything about you. You'll wake up the next day and you'll kind of feel the same as you did before. Just a couple extra dollars in your bank account. So I'd be remiss without saying that as well.
No, and I feel like we hear that, right, Dan? From people who win big amounts. That's a common kind of response, I feel, that I've heard before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, money definitely won't fix problems. It just makes sometimes them a little bit easier to deal with temporarily. Obviously, if you're in debt or something, it can fix those kind of problems. But as far as the things that carry you through life, won't do a lot for you.
So let me ask you, Nick, before we kind of get into the goodness, and we're going to deep dive, we're going to get a feel for how you guys won this thing, and how you can help our audience this year and moving forward. But were you guys playing fantasy together prior to last year? Is this something you did for the first time? Do you guys normally co-own teams? What's the history there between the three of you?
Yeah, that was our second year doing main event leagues together. So we had done 2 leagues previously, and we did pretty well, but we got slammed by injuries. So those teams didn't do that well, but we went to the drawing board and figured out a better formula to having a deeper team to be able to withstand a little bit of injury and, COVID stuff at that point. So we wanted to hammer home getting good receivers, a good tight end, and then go from there.
So receivers, tight end. Now, if kind of going into the season, do you guys have similar approaches to roster builds? Did you go in with a 0 RB approach? Did you go heavy RB? What was the strategy going into the season?
We wanted to try and diversify it up and not really stick to any one strategy, but we didn't really hammer running backs early too much. If we did, it was only 1 or 2, and then we waited forever if we wanted another one. So we kind of wanted to do hero for the most part, or sprinkle in some 0 strategies.
Yeah, I'd say if we had to pick something as a favorite, if I had gun to my head, had to pick a favorite, I'd say it's probably hero. Often seeing one running back in the first 2 picks and then another running back in the dead zone kind of thing, 5, 6, 7, depending on your draft position and how it shook out. As far as our process, I mean, we grew up together. We grew up playing in leagues together, not for high stakes, right? At some point, we wanted to kind of step it up and take it to the next level. Kaz alluded to, like our first year of our partnership. I mean, there's definitely some learning curves, some kinks, like how do you co-manage a team? How do you settle disagreements or the awkward moments? Like there's 3 of us. So let's say 2 of us have
the tiebreaker guy.
Yeah, the tiebreaker. Let's say the tiebreaker guy doesn't have a strong opinion. Like how do you navigate some of that? So definitely year 1, there was some learning curve there. Year 2, we made it a focus to kind of, I call it like wargaming drafts a little bit. Like once you know your draft position and like have some resemblance of ADP, just start to like rifle through some potential builds that are like, you know, plus or minus 7 picks from ADP, like what you could get. Know your best case scenarios, know your worst case scenarios, know like those inflection points in the draft where you're like, hey, if I don't have a tight end by this spot, I'm going to wait 6 more rounds. Right? Where's my cutoff for quarterback tiers, and like understanding those points in the draft, like help you stay really, really flexible and like adapt to situations and not get locked into like one strategy or another.
Did you have, Sean, did you guys have more, how many entries did you guys have together, if you don't mind me asking?
This year we did 7 together.
Last year
we did 4. We originally planned on doing 3, where we each controlled one draft, had final say, and then at the last minute, right towards the end, we were like, you know what, we're just gonna fire a 4th team. But yeah, we had 4 teams together.
I'm curious.
Our first draft.
Who was puppet master for that one?
Kaz was
we call it like creative control, right? Like we needed some way to say, if there's a disagreement, like who has the final say. So like this was the creative control. It wasn't like you just bowled over everyone's opinions all the time, but like push comes to shove and someone needed to make a call. Like we needed to come up with some system to navigate.
I like that system. I like that. That's pretty good. Dan, we co-own some teams. I mean, we were pretty good. Dan and I are pretty. I don't think we've ever butt heads or anything. We do own teams, the 3 of us, but it's like we had 1 football guys in a main event, I think. And they're both not going anywhere, so we're good.
Once you spend a lot of time talking with each other, and you there's some mind meld that happens, right? Like the more you do this, like there's some muscle memory that builds up, and you kind of get into a partnership groove where like, no, we do not argue nearly as much as we did year 1, and that was only with 2 teams, right? Like
year 1, we were all over each other. It was
like, why did we do this? All right, let's do it again.
Yeah. So JD and I, we have a lot of dynasty teams that we co-manage, and you know we've built a good base on that. Where you know when it comes to the season long, you know it's really pretty easy for us to draft together. We're often thinking the same things. I mean, we do have some good discussions as the draft is going along. Sometimes a little bit faster discussions if it's a fast draft, and you know a little bit more leisurely discussions if it's one of those 8-hour drafts or whatever. But I think it's important to know how you're going to resolve those problems, you know, before they happen, as much as possible. And it sounds like the first season was kind of where you guys figured all that out.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I'll give you another good example this year too. So during our preparation and kind of wargaming it, Kazi and I we kind of saw this situation coming from the 5-hole where we might have a Rashad Bateman versus Amon-Ra St. Brown call, and we were on like separate sides of that argument, but we had talked about it ahead of time, and we knew whose team was final say. And then what do you know, when that draft cycled there, like those were the 2 top guys on the board for us. And it's like we did the work ahead of time. Like we had that conversation before the clock was ticking down, and that ultimately like really helped just like the teamwork part of it.
Yeah, we all make our own rankings. So when we have discrepancies in the rankings, we look at those and talk about them before we're on the clock, so we don't have to make that decision in a minute, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It sounds like you guys all kind of subscribe to the same general roster construction, though. Is it, you know?
Yeah, we like
general,
receivers.
Okay.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so it's that. You know, I think that's one of the most important things is, you know, just at least have that general strategy down, have some agreement on that. You know, this is what we're going to do here, you know, and what, you know, but also willing to roll with the punches, obviously, if the draft hands you something, being willing to take it. But, you know, otherwise, having that strategy, I think, helps a ton.
Absolutely.
Plus, it's just way more fun to watch and stress and, you know, be kind of what's the word I'm looking for, Dan? I'm blanking.
I'm not sure on this one.
Oh, when you're watching the games,
normally I speak.
Usually you
Canadian,
complete
so.
me, Dan. Usually you complete my sentences, and we're just like, I know I've been potting with Theo a bit, so and you know it's all right. We'll get it right. We'll get it right. So guys, kicker and defense, right, is usually like a kind of a obscure of the position. It's like the forgotten child in the family, right? But can also make a huge difference, especially this time of year. You hear a lot of guys talking about the Bimageddons, how they manage it. So how do you guys, maybe I'll go to you first, Nick. How do you guys manage your kickers and defenses usually? Do you usually just roll with one? Do you try to get one earlier in the draft? Or do you kind of, or do you ever have two on your roster, like maybe this time of year?
Usually we only have one kicker for the regular season, and then we'll add a second one for the sprint just to have coverage in case of bad weather or injury. But for the regular season, we don't like to have more than one because that takes up too much capital for your other positions. But defenses, we have two a good amount of times. Last year for our final winning team, I think we had three. We played three different defense, 15, 16, 17. So we generally like to have one kicker, one D or two Ds like late season picking up the matchups.
Yeah, I think Kaz kind of summarized it pretty well. I think when you're trying to figure out if it's worth it, whether or not to have a second defense on your team, you kind of got to think about the texture of your team, right? Like if you have a build where you have like 5 receivers that are perfectly capable of top 20 weeks and your RB2 has gone to hell, right? Like you might not be able to afford that second defense because you need as many bets as you can on viable RB2s to keep you going through the year. If you have a more balanced team and you're looking at cutting an RB6, perhaps that's realistically not going to play for you unless everything kind of goes wrong, that might be a situation where you want to look ahead and try to figure out, hey, we know defense scoring isn't the most predictable thing in the world. Like, look at the data. Most of us aren't good at it. But where can we find touchdown equity, right? Like in a spot, or like if you know there's a bad spot coming up, like do you see someone out there that you can pick up cheaply now? You're not going to kill yourself by burning a roster spot, and they have some touchdown equity for that week. I mean, at the end of the day, that's about the best you can do on defenses. And kickers, to Kaz alluded to, as we get later and later in the year, like all these teams in the Northeast and on the East Coast, like there's a lot of weather considerations. And can you find domes? Can you find teams that trust their guys to at least attempt 50-yard field goals? I mean, 50-yard field goals are touchdowns, right? Like I know kickers get a bad rap, but at the end of the day, those long field goals on FFPC and some of the high stakes sites, like they're touchdowns. So they do matter.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think you've got to absolutely pay attention to the kicker position, for those reasons. And also, you can find guys like, Greg Zerline last week, for example, kicking field goal after field goal after field goal. That was one of those places where I looked at. I got a lot of Zerline exposure last week because he was one of those 4 or 5 guys. I was like, yeah, this could really be something, kicking in a dome and, a good kicker for a pretty good offense all of a sudden. I felt like there might be some points there. And just kind of trying to make those kind of bets. And that's the same thing you guys are doing on defense, too. Just trying to make those bets. Tennessee in Week 16 has the Texans. So
Kansas City next week.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you know where you're playing them, and you know where you're not playing them. So it's like if you've got a pretty good defense, but they got a crappy matchup on Week 16, then you go take Tennessee if you can, and stash them on your roster.
Exactly. Yeah, we have Philly actually, and that exact problem comes up for us because they have the Dallas matchup, and we have Dallas in one of our other leagues. So it's that exact issue has come up for us, where we have to figure out, okay, what do we want to do when it comes to Week 16 on defense, and where we fire. I think we fired on Vegas mostly. But we'll see how that plays out.
I think at the Steelers. Yeah,
at the Steelers. Yep. So,
And to answer your other question, we don't reach on kicker and defense. We made a rule that we don't take one before the 17th round. So, no, we're not like a 13th round.
That's
kicker
not like a
taking-
hard and fast rule if we're being
No,
super
'cause we-
honest with ourselves.
we
did
broke
the
it this year, I
Union
think.
League, yeah. But
I'm more likely to break that on a defense than a kicker, I think.
We did it on. We wanted one share of indie defense. Look how that turned out. But like I think
Yeah,
it was
that
our
turned out
last
real
draft,
well.
our second last draft. We wanted one share. We totally took him to the 16th round.
defenses interchange like every year. So
I
when you
know.
reach on one of those, it's
Consistency is tough with defenses for sure.
Yeah.
Guys, smash the like, smash the subscribe. If you're watching right now, you're hearing all the goodness. We're going to get deeper and deeper into it, into some players and into this year. Before I get back to the show sheet, one of you mentioned earlier learning about where you wanted your depth or how to build depth with your roster in order to go all the way to the end and take down that ship. Maybe I'll go to you, Dom. And if it wasn't you, I apologize if anyone wants to take over the question. But what exactly did you learn from that you came back and did better last year? That well that you took the whole thing down.
It was some of my most growth I had as a fantasy player over the last like 3 years or so since I've been playing high stake is understanding the texture of your team, the strength of your positions, not just like, do I have 4 good running backs or 5 good running backs? It's what are my running backs good at? What is their floor? What is their ceiling? How do all the pieces fit together? Right. And it's kind of like driving a car where like, if you're driving a car and you're staring right in front of you on the road, you're not going to see everything. You're not going to be the best driver. Like you have to pick your head up and kind of look ahead, right? Understand how the pieces of your team fit together. And like, no, we can't predict everything that's going to happen in an NFL season. And the only thing that's predictable is its unpredictability. But understanding like, hey, what's the right mixture of handcuff running backs who are zeros all the weeks except for 2 that they start, right? Number of handcuffs versus pass catchers versus like workhorse. Like it's not just like the number, right? It's who they are and what kind of role do they have and how do those all fit together with your bye weeks, with the injuries that you know about, right?
Do you guys play best ball, Dom?
We do play best ball. I'm definitely going to play more best ball next year. I find the format like completely fascinating and it's a totally different game in a lot of ways. And I know
the reason I ask is the draft boards are kind of the visual of when you're talking about texture. And Dan and I talk about that, how it's almost like an art when you're building the roster. Because you've got the colors with the positions, but what kind of receiver or what kind of running back do you have? What weeks are you expecting them to be effective on your team versus the other ones? So I like the way you word that with the texture, but I think that as you get deeper into best ball, you'll find that becomes even more relevant because you're building it and then you can't do anything, right? There's no way.
Right. It's harder. You only have 30 minutes or so to put it
exactly
together.
To figure everything out.
Yeah, and I think to Dom's point too, the texture of redraft teams where you do have waivers, it changes over the course of the season. I mean, injuries will radically change that texture, and you have a chance to respond to it. And how you respond often determines how that team comes out.
exactly
100%. Dan, do you have? I'm kind of hogging the questions here. I'll let you. You've been nice and polite and quiet. Why don't you jump in with? I'm sure you've got a couple.
Well, let's talk fab real quick. How do you guys handle fab throughout the season? Are you guys typically big spenders early? Do you kind of bide your time and wait? Are you trying to hold on and have the hammer at the end? Is it dependent on the season? Just in general, how do you handle it during the season?
I would say generally it's situational. I mean, we're never going to be passive. If there's a player on the waiver wire that we think is going to significantly improve our team, we are going to fire for sure. Like we're not gonna just lay back and not go after guys that we really, really like. So as an example, there was a George Pickens drop in one of our leagues this year. We fired hard. A Jacoby Myers drop in one of our leagues. We fired hard. That kind of thing. But in general, we try to make sure we have enough left towards the end, but in most of our leagues this year, we were on the low side as we get down to the wire here, to the point where I think we spent all of our money pretty much outside of maybe a couple bucks yesterday. So, but generally speaking, I think we're going to be aggressive on the guys that we want, and and not really hoard the money in any way, shape, or form unless the team calls for it. Like a team like last year that won, it was tough to make moves throughout the year because we were so deep all the way down to and we had Michael Pittman sitting on our bench. Emmanuel Sanders first half of the year sitting on our bench. Poor Michael Pittman is right. The guy is a stud, and he never got into our lineup.
Rich man problems.
Yeah, right. It was wild. But we didn't. So on that team, we had money by the end because there was not really ever a need to fire. And our best free agent we added for barely anything when we got Burrow. So.
It's not to say that there's no advantages to keeping money towards the end. The way I kind of think about it is like if you save money for down the stretch, you're hoping that a player falls to you that you might have had a chance to add something impactful week 1 that could help you the whole season. I mean, almost any game, game of strategy that you play, like the aggressive option is more than likely to be your best option. And Jeff Wilson is a great example this year of like a guy who wasn't getting drafted early at all. And frankly, wasn't that expensive before the season. He was someone we prioritized everywhere, is just taking like a 10 to 15% crack on. It's just like that kind of player with that, he had track record. We know the system's good. And we got some news that says like, hey, that role might be a lot more valuable than we think. And he was going the 13th round by the end of the season. You don't get chances to add those guys too often during the year. They don't just grow on trees, right? Take the aggressive move and spend your money. Now, obviously you got to be strategic and save money for some needs and anticipate, look at other people's rosters down the stretch, look at your schedules coming down the stretch and anticipate those needs. But you're not hoping that a gold bar is going to fly out of the sky, right? Be aggressive.
Agreed.
Let's do a quick chat question. Chat's been lit. I've been ignoring it a bit. Pick 3, FPPR, Kenneth Walker, Ramondre, Najee, Damian Pierce, or Akers. I don't like Pierce's matchup, and I have a must-win game. Who wants to take this one first?
Well, I mean, Walker might not play, so that kind of is tricky. Ramondre's a smash. Obviously, that's a no-brainer. I don't think I like Akers.
We're not trusting Akers yet, are we?
No, I don't. I think it's too early, and they're offense,
especially on a Thursday.
Are they even gonna have that many opportunities to score touchdowns? Yeah. He's going to be touchdown dependent. I think you have to play Najee if he plays. It's just you have to. The upside is fantastic, obviously there. And I do think, I know Damian Pierce doesn't have a great matchup, but I think you're going to end up having to play him because I don't know that Walker, he might play.
I'm gonna stand alone here and say you should play Akers. And it's Ramondre, Najee, and Akers.
Not alone, Don. Not alone. I'm right there with you, Don.
I agree with that.
I got to look up the.
I know Akers feels a little gross, but I don't think the spot is as bad as you think. And you have some other ancillary risk here that you need to manage. The Texans might not score any points this weekend, so
and Walker I think is pretty unlikely to play. So you got to make sure that you can set your lineup with no Walker. So
I guess the only I guess if we're looking at tonight's game, and we'll talk a bit more about it later, but Vegas 6.5 favorite. How much like we said, how much is Akers going to actually get opportunity? But if you guys like him better, there you go. You've got a couple options. Do a bit of more research. You got about 45 to make that decision. Whoever, what is that? Wombly, welcome Wombly. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, buddy. We appreciate the question. And guys, keep dropping the questions. We'll answer them as we go here. MyFFPC.com, guys. These guys took down $500,000, the 3 of them, playing fantasy football. That's no joke, guys. Check out myffpc.com. Use the link below. It'll give you a sign-up bonus. Right now, you've got the weekly challenge. The playoff challenge is coming up, and we'll dive deep into those. We got our boy OG in the house. What's up, Theo?
I'm late, not fashionably late. I'm just late.
It's all good, brother. You got a good reason.
I'm happy we have the champs in the house. It's championship week in FFPC, so what better guest to have to get us started this week? I know that Dan and I have a team in a championship game. I'm sure you guys have a number of teams going. It's nothing like a sweat on championship week. It's a whole lot of fun before the sprint.
For sure. Is that another cue you want to drop before we get back into it, Dan?
Yeah. Let's hit this one real quick. It's kind of a
that's a good one.
two-parter, but basically what he's asking is he wants to add Daniel Bellinger as another option for a flex spot. He does have Taysom, Ayuk, Julio, guys like that. Or should he carry a second kicker? This is for a main event. And so he's thinking about, the week 15 through 17 sprint.
Who's your kicker?
Yeah, and also, are those your second flex options or just your flex op? Like, are those two flex?
Second, looks like second flex.
Okay.
Who's
My
his
knee
tight end?
So let us know your tight. Oh, Ryan Suckup, Theo's favorite kicker, and Dan.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think I would definitely go for the second kicker here. I don't know that Bellinger is necessarily going to get you any more than any of those other guys.
Yeah,
his tight end's Kittle, so it's not like he's got to slide him in or anything.
And Suckup has comfortable Suckup does have comfortable matchups in the sprint, but you've also got like Ayuk, and I don't think from the evidence we saw in that game, I don't think it's like necessarily a lock that San Francisco just stops throwing the ball. And if they keep throwing the ball, Ayuk is going to get his share of that. I mean, he feels like a pretty comfortable play in that second flex spot to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, appreciate the question, ML. Guys, let's jump into it. Let's start with tonight. I mean, tonight we have two teams. I mean, the spread is 6.5. We have two teams that the future is looking cloudy. Like you're not super confident about either one of these guys, especially LA, right? If I go to you first, Sean, who other than Jacobs and Adams do you like on these teams if we're talking either rest of season or even going into next year? Is there anyone else we should be paying attention to that should we be liking right now on these rosters?
Oh, it's pretty. For me, it's pretty disgusting. I guess if I was going to pick anyone, I like Mac Hollins. It's probably a pretty safe answer. I mean, he has shown, obviously, he has some pretty considerable ceiling. He can have some absolutely monster weeks where he just blows up, and he seems to have a lot of talent. He seems to have like the ability to make big plays down the field, make big one-on-one catches where he can just. Carr just throws it up and he can make those plays. I like Amir Abdullah as well as an interesting play, pass catching option for the Raiders. I don't like anyone on the Rams the rest of this year. Just doesn't seem like that's going to be an offense that's worth rolling at this point.
Sorry, we got it.
But we'll see. Yeah,
we got an echo. Somewhere.
Is it
Let's see if that makes it better.
Oh, that does make it better.
There you go. Oh, we still have an echo.
Jesus. Is it better?
I think it is you, Nick.
I think it's Nick.
Hold on,
Do you have the stream on, Nick, on your computer or something?
Someone have the stream on while we're streaming. Apologies to the audience here. All right, I think we got it.
Yeah.
All right,
there we go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was on the Rams. It's just tough to like anyway. I mean, for next year, if Cooper Kupp gets healthy, but I don't know who the quarterback of the Rams is going to be next year. I don't know that it's going to be Matthew Stafford. So what are they going to do? They're going to have to sign someone. I mean, they're taking a shot at Baker Mayfield right now. So that offense seems really, really tough to buy into at this point too. So,
desperation is calling.
I can't believe they think Baker might actually play tonight. It seems like satire. Like someone's joking that he can.
It'd be worth tuning into, at least be a little more exciting, a little more entertainment. So let's do this. Let's go around. We'll do a quick rapid fire. Sean, you start. Sean, you add what you think's happening in this game. 6.5 spread for Vegas, and then the other four. Why don't you give your thought on tonight's game and give a name if you have another name other than what Sean gave with regards to who you like on this roster kind of moving forward or into next year other than Adams and Jacobs. Nick?
He's muted.
He's muted. I think Vegas wins and covers tonight. I think Vegas wins comfortably. I don't know if the Rams score a touchdown tonight.
Does anyone disagree with that? Let's start there.
I'm a little skeptical that the line's only 6.5 because it feels like it should be more, but yeah, it feels like Vegas wins. So, no.
Yeah, that's definitely Nick.
Yeah.
My other rest of season, if I had to pick someone, Tutu Atwell, finally getting a chance and might actually be somewhat good. I know he's still very, very skinny, but he's getting touches and making plays. So if I had to pick someone,
Theo?
I think the line's about right. I mean, the Raiders are not exactly world beaters. It's about a touchdown line, so it seems about right. And I think they do win, and I think they do cover. I'll say that I have way too much Daniel Carlson. I have Daniel Carlson with pretty much every dynasty team, and then a bunch of redraft teams. So I'm hoping we get some field goal points, and then I have, obviously I have a little bit of Devontae Adams. So I would like to see him go off. I think Foster Moreau is not like the worst option. He's like, just based on his usage, he's on the field the whole time. You've got to put him as a kind of a low end tight end 1, high end tight end 2 every single week. I do have him a spot or two. It's just a very consolidated team. Like you have the 2 studs, and then you're kind of hoping for guys like the tertiary pieces like Moreau and Holland. So go Daniel Carlson for me. That's my guy tonight.
Dan, I mean, you're pretty much you're hoping for a TD, right? When you're looking at Foster, Dan.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just wild to me how little Josh McDaniels has stuck to his priors with this team. I mean, we expected Josh Jacobs to be in a big-time timeshare, which did not happen. We expected, him to feature a tight end like Waller. And, I know Waller got hurt, but even before he got hurt, he was not getting featured to the extent you would necessarily expect in this kind of offense.
Is there anything there, Dan, moving forward with Waller? Like, is he a buy in dynasty? Is he anything, or is he just dead?
I think he can come back. I mean, I don't know how much of a buy he is. Having seen what we saw in the offense to start with, I mean, if you can get a super cheap price on him, yeah, absolutely go ahead. But if you can't get that discount price, no, I'm not buying into Waller that he's going to do what he did in 2019 or 2020. Anything like that, I think that ship sailed. So looking forward, I mean, Cam Akers is a guy who I just don't think really fit the Rams blocking scheme. He's likely to be released, go elsewhere next year. He'd be a guy I'd take a real flyer on again if you can get him super cheap for next year. This year, I think it's him and Kyron Williams, and they're going to rely on the run. So there might be a few fantasy points to be scrounged, but I certainly wouldn't feel good about starting any of them.
I agree.
Dom, you guys are in Buffalo. You want to talk Bills. I could see it on your face. Theo loves talking James Cook. He's been telling Fantasyland for weeks now to get James Cook. So let me ask you this. Is James Cook the head chef? Is he taking over this backfield in the next 2 weeks? Or is he kind of limited? Is his ceiling limited by either an RBBC, maybe his experience as we get closer to the playoffs? What are your thoughts on this backfield for your Bills?
I would be surprised if he was like a true league winner, like Rashad Penny or Amon-Ra, different position last year. I would be surprised if we got there because I think the ceiling is limited. But that being said, I don't think it's like limited enough where you shouldn't be excited about the places you were stashing him. To the extent you need on RB2 kind of teams, and you need that type of player. I mean, it's the committee itself, I don't think limits him. Like he can still get those like 6-catch games, and he's showing some running chops now, but I don't think we're going to be full wheels up on James Cook.
Theo, you agree with your boy on?
Yeah, I think that, it's a big ask for him to be like, like giving you the 20 points per game that Penny was giving you last year. But I do think he's a very reliable flex moving forward. And I think he does have a potential spike week in him. Whether he's able to do that for 3 straight weeks, I don't think he is. But I do think, if you're using him in the 3 weeks, you're going to get a spike week from him. So I'm very bullish on Cook. 2 out of his last 3 games have been solid. And that one game where he was kind of a 0 was a short week. So I'm bullish on him. I believe in the talent. I believe in the pass catching ability. And the Bills really do need a reliable pass catching weapon, heading into the playoffs. So I think, Cook developing helps them in real life football. as well as our fantasy teams.
Sean, I'm going to go to you with Gabe Davis. I mean, huge hype coming into the season. With where this offense was going, 2022, you expected him to be a big part of that. 2 weeks as a top 10 receiver this year. I mean, you don't necessarily expect him to be wide receiver 1, but even as a wide receiver 2, we're far and we're very rare this year. How do you see Gabe Davis rest of the season, and is he someone that you want to invest in going into next year?
Rest of season, the thing about Davis is he always has the upside to be the wide receiver 1 at any given week. There's always a chance he does that just because he's so explosive. The problem, I mean, and this maybe gets in the nitty gritty a little bit, but he only runs 4 routes, right? He doesn't run nearly enough routes in the offense. He doesn't do enough in the offense to create significant opportunity for himself outside of, go straight and beat your guy and catch a deep ball from Josh, or, run down the field, cut inside and be open over the middle, or go to the sideline. And he's great at those things, but those are the only things he really brings to the table. So in terms of what he can do, he can absolutely crush an amazing deep ball. He can be a massive threat. He can have a huge spike week, but his floor is 0. And he so inconsistent when it comes to that stuff that I don't know if you're just going to get enough out of him often enough. I think he's a great play for best ball. I think you're ecstatic to have him in best ball leagues, but in managed leagues, when you're rolling him out there, when you might get 40, you might get 3. It's tough sometimes to really fire.
You're ecstatic to have a healthy roster at this point in best ball. I did
That's
say that.
true. That's true.
The fields and Lamar
Facts.
Jackson builds are
Facts.
dust. Just
It's
complete
amazing
dust
that
on
happened.
those 2 QB builds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Gabe's route tree, as Sean's alluded to, is kind of connects to some of Buffalo's red zone struggles too, where I think teams are starting to figure out that the Bills want to do like one of 4 things in the red zone. It's like roll Joshy out to the right and have multiple people crossing. It's a slant. It's an occasional fade, and then maybe some quarterback run stuff. Like, we're not serious threats to run the ball when teams expect us to run the ball. And you're seeing like Gabe Davis run the same routes over and over and over again, having super limited effectiveness with like a very narrow route tree.
Nick, it sounds like both Cook and Davis flex spots. Let's go to the tight end position. We've got our tight end guru, Dan, here. What are your thoughts, Nick, on Knox? Last year, giving us 8 top 10 tight end weeks. This year, only 2. Do you have a reason for that? Do you see that changing as we get more into the money weeks?
You guys can hear me, first of all, right?
We can hear you perfectly.
Okay, good. I was having a Pat Kareem moment there.
I don't have my soundboard
honestly,
up.
Knox feels like a touchdown dependent tight end right now. He's just not getting used enough between the 20s. So last year he was getting used a little bit more between the 20s and scoring touchdowns. So it just feels like this year, without the lack of usage between the 20s, he's not getting enough catches to really make a difference in your lineup. So he feels like another one of those touchdown dependent guys, kind of like Foster Moreau or just any one of those guys.
Anyone not named Kelsey and Kittle
Kittle.
and Andrews. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dan, anything to add?
Throw in that like bucket of tight end 11 through tight end like 19, and just pick whoever falls in the end zone helps you that week. So yeah, he's hard to rely on. If you had a Josh Allen team, you might want to jam him in there just for the you're looking for the correlation and potential touchdown. But I don't know. I really, it's hard. It's a hard player to trust.
Yeah, totally hard to trust. I mean, we always thought that the touchdowns were going to regress from last year. It was just an unsustainable rate. And then, he, as Nick pointed out, he's just not getting used that much, even between the 20s. So, the double whammy like that just makes him extremely untrustable. I still think he's a, dynasty-wise, he's an all right tight end. But, hopefully he sold last year or early this year before his value completely evaporated.
Let's go NFC. Dallas, another powerhouse offense, guys. Let's talk about the running backs. Just obviously you've got Zeke there with his contract, but Pollard's been just popping, right? We've expected this. we finally see him being a bigger part of this, giving fantasy land what they want as owners. How do we see this developing though? How do we see this moving forward? How do we see this going into next year even? And where do we want Pollard to land as owners? Dom, I'll start with you.
I don't think we mind if he ends up back in Dallas and some sort of either Zeke is not on the team or like a clear reduced role. I think there are some like potentially interesting spots for him. I was looking at teams with some cap space as I do think he's going to command a decent salary at this point. I think the Chicago Bears might be a very, very fun place for Tony Pollard to end up. A Justin Fields-led offense with a speedy back like him, and assuming they do a little bit more to address the receiver position than just trade away, which looks like a top 35 pick for Chase Claypool, that could be a sneaky, exciting spot for him, and he might get all the work he could handle there.
Sean, what are your thoughts? Pollard giving us in the last 5 weeks? He's given us in the past 4 weeks. He's given us 3 top 8 running back production.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been pretty clear. I mean, if for sure this year, but even I think into last year, that he's the clearly more talented player in that backfield. I mean, his ability to his explosiveness, his ability to make big plays, his ability to turn any screen pass into an 80-yard touchdown. Zeke just can't do that anymore. For whatever it's worth, he just doesn't have that explosiveness anymore. So he's gonna. I think Pollard's gonna end up, being not the lead back, but I think he's going to command enough of a role going forward that he's just, he should be a no-brainer RB1, every single week the rest of the year. He's so explosive. He just like I said, any play could be an 80-yard touchdown for him, and I think that's has to be in your lineup no matter what. I think he's the easiest no-brainer play going down the stretch here.
Let's go over back to the AFC and let's talk about aerial game. Nick, I'll go to you for this one. One of my favorite receivers, one of my most owned guys is T. Higgins. He was going at the 2-3 turn, I believe, coming into the season. But he's only given us 2 weeks this year as a top receiver. I know he only has 2 touchdowns. His target share, I believe, 19.8%, which puts him like in the mid-30s receiver-wise. What do we see moving forward? Is there like a positive regression coming? I don't know if I'm saying that right. I always get it wrong. But with regards to the touchdowns, Nick, how do you see T. Higgins being drafted next year as we go into 2023?
I think he's going to have similar-ish value, maybe just slightly lower down that 3rd round. I still think being on Cincy, people are going to want in on that offense. That offense is just – they're just taking stride right now. T. Higgins, I feel like the last few weeks is starting to look like himself too. So I don't know. I feel like he feels like someone that could be really important down the stretch, or even with Jamar back. Now you have to start shifting double coverage to Jamar. I think it'll open it up for T. And T was dealing with an injury there early season, multiple injuries, honestly. So it just feels like he's just getting his stride now, and I think he will be important down the stretch. I think he'll be still 3rd rounder next year with how much people like receivers.
Yeah, as far as 23 drafts go, I think there's going to be we were just talking about Gabe Davis. I think there's going to be a similar phenomenon, even if T. Higgins has like an abysmal end to the year, or God forbid, like rolls his ankle, has a high ankle sprain some way, where the offense and the situation is good enough, and the players, once you start to get to mid-4th, late 4th, 5th round, you just don't feel that confident about their situations and their talent, where like T. Higgins is going to start to stand out on boards, even if he has a really rough end of the year and like really bad advance or cash rates. Gabe Davis, I know he was like a social media kind of hype player, but it was the same idea, right? Like once you got to like wide receiver 24, 25 or so, I mean, the situation starts to stand out a ton. And I don't see how that doesn't happen for T. Higgins. I do think T's like dynasty value was a little out of control going into this year. Like he was a pretty consensus, like somewhere between wide receiver 9 and wide receiver 12 in dynasty. And I think that was like a little aggressive, but like I said, I mean, it's age related, right? It's situation and just like, hey, he's going to be in a pretty damn good situation for the next 3 years. Like that's about as good as we can get with anyone in the NFL. It's like, I get that, but I think that was a little much.
Yeah, I agree with Dom that I think that like in Dynasty, we talked about like Garrett Wilson and Olave. Like I think those guys could kind of jump him potentially in a Dynasty startup. But in terms of redraft, I think T. Higgins is, for FFPC, I think he's a third-round pick. You really can't drop him out of the third. I think more likely than not, he's an early third. And I think for NFFC and FFWC, he's a second-rounder. The guy averages 15.7 points per game this year. We've seen him be able to take over an NFL game. And at the end of the day, you're still betting on talent and situation, and he's got both.
Yeah, and look at the ADPs for like third, fourth round receivers this year and like how they're doing. It's not like there's a huge list of people like you mentioned Olave and Wilson. Like, yeah, those guys could leapfrog him, but not a ton of other receivers
in Dynasty. I think it's like that'll be an interesting, and that's a good offseason question. But when you start ranking the wide receivers for next year, I think that there's going to be a ton of them. Like you guys said, how wide receiver crazy it's going to be. But I think the first round is going to be so wide receiver heavy that it's going to naturally make the second round, you're going to gobble up the rest. So, like Chris Olave versus T. Higgins is an interesting one for next year. You might go Olave just because he's a wide receiver one, but the quarterback situation in Cincinnati is just so good. So, I don't know, Dan, what do you think with T?
I mean, I think it's a little bit overblown. He's still a top 12 receiver in points per game, and if you take out Michael Thomas in his 3 games. He's a top 12 receiver, and there's a limit to how high he can go because he does have Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon to compete with, but there's also a limit to how low he can go. So he's one of those picks. It's not going to be a league winner, but he's going to be a solid addition to a wide receiver core, and I think those guys are going to go. I don't know if he'll go early third anymore, but late third, early fourth, something like that is kind of where I see him for next year.
Yeah, and you're looking at over a 6 point difference in the splits with Chase in and out of the lineup. Just this year, looking at this year with the 8 versus 4 games with the 2. So Theo, I've been, we've kind of gone through some questions. You and I have asked our guests this week about the QB situations going on. I don't know if you want to start this conversation. You want to go straight to the guests.
Basically, what way would you guys have gone this week? Basically, it comes down to kind of if you could roster one for the rest of the season, would it be Mike White or Tyler Huntley, which were pretty much the only 2 options, kind of impactful options that people could have added that lost.
Don't be dissing Purdy like that. Don't be dissing Purdy like that. Yeah.
We got big Brock going here.
We will. If you guys want to throw Brock in and be contrarian, go for it.
Yeah, I have White, Purdy, Huntley. I'm actually not super bullish on Huntley in this exact. It's not last year for them. It's not last year. It's not the same spot. And I was a little excited about Mike White. I mean, I don't know what else we need to see from Mike White to make him think like when you're getting into these desperate times, like he's the guy. He gives you some access to ceiling.
Yeah, and they're not scared to throw the ball in New York at all. Like they trust him almost completely. I mean, he's obviously had pretty solid success in certainly a limited sample for them. And to get back to what Dom said on Huntley, I agree with him. I don't know if I'm as bullish on Huntley. The offense is not anywhere near where it was last year. Obviously, not having Hollywood Brown is a big difference maker, but they don't have Bateman anymore either this year, so that's a nightmare for him. Obviously, he's got the rushing upside, which is great, but I mean, Lamar did too, and Lamar's been what?
They're not running the ball
this year,
well.
Right?
No, they've run the ball terribly. So I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be enough of a difference maker. And I think Mike White, if they keep throwing the ball with the volume that they do, he could throw for 300+ yards every week with the amount they're going to be, throwing the ball, and they're going to be playing from behind most likely this week. So that's a nice spot where you could be chasing some, a big passing game.
Yeah, Mike White is very simply the answer here. It feels like that offense is just way funner. I think they're playing better than Baltimore. Baltimore's just too banged up right now.
Yeah, and for sure, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, the Jets are just playing really loose right now on offense. It seems to me. They're out there. They just have a lot of confidence in what they're doing. Moving away from Zach Wilson was such a total shot in the arm for that offense. You could see the spring and the step of every player. That just wasn't there when Wilson was quarterbacking the team. So The Jets may have stumbled into something there, because they're stuck with Wilson's contract for a while yet. But they may have stumbled on the bargain basement option that can hold them out through that time period.
So we usually walk out of the show talking about tonight's game. We've already done that. So let's go back around. I'll start with Nick. And I mean, let's go back to your Bills. You guys are clearly cheering for the Bills. I think a lot of people this year, it'd be nice to see them kind of take that next step. They clearly dodged a bullet, like Dan mentioned in our chat, with not signing AB. Odell Beckham seems to be in the media right now. I mean, anytime he's doing anything, he seems to be in the news and headlining it. But should we care, Nick, as fantasy owners? Is he going to be relevant this year? And how do you see his value kind of, ascending or descending into 2023?
Yeah, I personally don't think he has any value for this year. Well, at least for fantasy. He serves more of a purpose to the team that signs him for the playoffs, I think. For Dynasty, that's another question. I think he might have some value for Dynasty because he should be good to go next year. But for this year, I don't think he has any value.
And I forgot to add, remind the peeps your handle and anything else you wanna walk out with.
Yeah, I'm at _ Nick Koss, NICKCOS. And just thank you guys for having me. And look for me on Twitter, even though I don't tweet too much. I'll like some of your tweets if you tweet some good stuff.
Appreciate you, Nick. Nick for sure. Nick for sure wins beard of the night, Garrett, for sure.
Thank you for that.
Sean, how about you, man?
About Odell, I agree. Odell's not going to have any value this year. I hope the Bills sign him. I think they could use him. I think it would be great down the stretch to have him as an option. Hopefully he would be ready for the playoffs. It's kind of sounding iffy, though, even be ready for the championship game. So it's a little thin there. I expect him to go to Dallas still, but we'll see what happens. He might not. I think if he doesn't sign with Dallas, I don't know if he signs anywhere. I think he just ends up waiting until the offseason, honestly, with what it sounds like his injury issues are. My handle's at Sean _Stutzman. And I'm going to leave on a different sports note. I'm going to leave by saying Tage Thompson for the Hart Trophy.
Oh,
Nice. Dom, where would you like to see Odell before you give your handle and anything else you'd like to leave with?
I have this weird feeling that he's going to go back to the New York Giants. I agree with Sean. I do think in a world where he is healthy enough to play, he definitely serves a purpose for a team aspiring to win a championship this year, and that the Bills definitely tick all those boxes. The AB talking about them together feels a little unfair. I know they both hogged the spotlight in a lot of ways, but I don't think we have a ton of evidence that Odell is a malicious or nefarious actor. I would like to think that this sideshow would not be happening if he knew he was. I think he thinks he's playing this year and has been underwhelmed by the talks. And I'm hoping the Cowboys is just a leverage to go back home to the Giants. As far as his value going forward in 2023, I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to have some value still, but it'll probably be pretty similar to last year, I guess. It's hard to see it moving the needle one way or the other. I mean, he had a fun run for the Rams and the talent's there, but I don't think anyone's naive enough to think that the health concerns and just the general consistency is anything worth being super excited about. My handle is at FF_Go Bills. That was supposed to be a team Twitter account at some point. And I kind of just hijacked it. I'm not the self-appointed leader of this scary band. It's just, kind of how it worked out. Shout out to my boys, Parker and Miles. It was Parker's third birthday yesterday, and Tage Thompson scored 5 goals for him. That was pretty fun.
Nice.
That's pretty fun.
Nice. Dan, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, second ACL, less than a year removed from it, over 30 years old. I will back up the Brinks truck on the negative. Just bet the under. Whatever it is, I'll bet the under.
He's the overripe sleeper, no E on the end. Theo, someone mentioned in the chat, and I've been saying this for a while, you're definitely the hardest working guy in fantasy. You're back on the screen tonight. You and I did a few shows earlier this week. Guys, go check that out. Why don't you remind the people where they can find you, remind them of all your other goodness and who we have coming up in the district.
Yes, you can find me at the OG Fantasy. You can find me here in the GOAT District. Not daily, but we're getting there, JD. We're grinding through the end of the season. And then you can find my written work on Player Profiler. Not a lot of help to our high stakes people, but I'm going to keep the waiver wire column going for home leaguers throughout the playoffs. And I have a couple other written pieces coming out, kind of some reaction pieces to the season, maybe some early ADP predictions and some early rankings, stuff like that for next year. And then, we're loading it up. We have Adam Levitan sat down with Dan and I this summer. We went at it. We're going to go at it again tomorrow afternoon. Adam was team Daniel Jones, and Dan and I were team Cole Kmet. We bumped heads a little bit, so a lot to react with. So definitely tune in tomorrow with Adam Levitan tomorrow afternoon. And then this coming week, we've loaded it up. We've got DWZ Memphis, Randy from the War Zone coming in. We have looks like it might be Chris Eibel next week for a high stakes show, and then we also have Anthony Amico is going to be on hopefully next week, but he's in the woodwork, which is the Establish the Run Dynasty guru. That should be very good. So we're cooking. We're helping you out through the playoffs, and it was great getting a chance to meet you guys in Vegas this year. Continued success with your teams this year. And it was awesome having you guys on tonight.
Yeah, appreciate you guys, Nick, Sean, and Dom. Guys, make sure you're following them. Make sure you're following Dan and Theo, of course. You guys in the chat have been awesome tonight. We appreciate all of you. We're going to answer that Lamar Fields question in the outro, in the B-side section of tonight's show. Guys, enjoy tonight's game. Get those W's. Remember, there's another waiver wire Sunday morning. You're like me and you realize that one of your rosters is missing a kicker for this week. So not treating by Mageddon properly, Theo. So hopefully you're not too on me for that one. But guys, good luck tonight. Good luck this week. Get those W's. We'll check you all later.
GOAT District, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
Dan, you're giving away my secrets, man. That's a name I have for a show later down the road. Nice. From the poker days, right, Sean?
Love it.
Yeah.
Poker After Dark. So, guys, we got a question about Lamar and Fields, dynasty-wise. Let's go around. I think it's worth a quick discussion. I know you guys want to get to the game. Dom, maybe I'll go to you first.
Still Lamar for me. Fields has been super fun this year. The passing, I know he's had some splash plays, but it's not quite there. And Lamar has some outs to go to some really fun offenses. If my conspiracy theory is that he is not going to play for the Baltimore Ravens next year, and there's a lot of fun places he could go. So
Miami Dolphins for Lamar Jackson is the hot.
I don't want that.
Wow.
But
that's the one that's floating around. So if you give him Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill with his rushing ability and the mind of Mike McDaniel, then it's, you love that one. And he's from Florida. It's kind of a natural fit, and Miami's been kind of, waiting. And that would certainly be an upgrade from Tua. So I think that you still go Lamar. I say that kind of like, if I had a Lamar team and you offered me Justin Fields plus, you could probably talk me into making the trade, but I think that Lamar is just a cleaner profiler.
That's exactly what I was going to say. If you can get Fields plus for Lamar, I'd do that. Guys, anything, Sean?
I agree with Tom completely. I've been saying since before the year that I think he's not going to be in Baltimore next year. I think it's extremely unlikely. I think everything that Baltimore has done, kind of shows their hand that they're not planning on keeping him. I don't think it makes sense for where their organization, the franchise direction is. So I think he's going to end up somewhere else. And I think, like Dom said, there are some fascinating spots that he could wind up in that could make him extremely, extremely good right away. I think a sneaky, interesting spot for him is Tampa. Like if Brady retires,
I didn't even think of that one. I like that.
You start firing on situations like that, which is really, really spicy. Obviously, I think Miami's the spiciest answer. I think putting him in Miami's offense, that's disgusting. That's horrific for me as a Bills fan. But yeah, I think it's still Lamar for me, but it's close. Fields, the ceiling for Fields is outrageous because he's as good or better than Lamar running the ball currently for me. So he has some insane ceiling.
Nick, is that a 49ers hat that you're wearing?
No, it's a Sabres hat.
Oh, it's a Sabres hat. I was going to say, don't say to the 49ers, Lamar. Come on.
Yeah, I guess I'm the contrarian on this one. I think I'm Fields on this. I don't know. Obviously, the landing spot's going to be important. Like I think Tampa Bay was a really good example, Sean. That would be probably outside of Miami the next best option. So if he goes there, that's probably enough. But I'd be looking to sell Lamar for Fields plus. Like if you can get another second rounder, or if it's super flex, if you could get another one, I'd sign up for that right now. No problem.
Theo? Dan?
I'm going to neatly dance around giving an actual answer by bringing up a team that I have a dynasty team that I had Lamar Jackson and Justin Fields on. It was a team that it's a rebuild, so I'd taken Fields and I still wasn't quite there. So I traded, offered them both out in trade. I got a taker on Lamar Jackson. So I traded Lamar Jackson, Chris Olave for Kyler Murray, Kadarius Toney, a first and a second.
First? 2023?
Yeah, 2023 first, 2023 second.
And how is that early, mid, late?
Probably mid-ish, I would say.
Okay.
So
you downgraded quarterback and got another asset.
But I still have still have
Fields, it's not that much. No, that much of a downgrade down to Kyler.
Yeah, exactly. And I still have Fields, the way I'm looking at it is I can still trade off either Kyler or Fields and still feel pretty good about quarterback, and still grab more assets. But this was kind of the deal that was open to me. Hated trading away Olave, but with the first and the second on a rebuild, felt like it was worth it.
Hold on real quick, guys. Are we going Vegas or Philly?
We already talked about
we put Vegas in. Vegas is in. Vegas is
in
here.
In chat.
Full circle.
Came back to that. Noah's correct. You would tag him and trade him. Like I said, let him walk. That was a little dramatic. You wouldn't just take him for nothing. Yeah. The flip side of that, though, is Lamar doesn't need to play. I know it will cost him money, but if you tag him and he's not happy about it, he doesn't have to play for you. He doesn't.
What do you guys think? Vegas versus Philly defense. Which one you playing?
I'm using Vegas in a few spots, but I think that I would still use Philly if I had the option. Philly has not allowed a QB1 week at all this season. Philly hasn't allowed one QB1 week, so I just think that they're locked in, and there's potential for turnovers. And
they've also had a really suspect schedule though too. It's been pretty weak for the whole year. It feels like, doesn't it?
Tiger.
I have a bunch of teams where I have Philly and Seattle defense, and it's a tough call this week.
I say
Seattle's got a good matchup, a really good one.
Yeah, I was going to say it's close between LA and Philly, but I just look at going against Barkley and going against Akers, and then going against the other weapons in LA versus New York. I'll take Vegas. I hate to say it, but I'll take Vegas this week. I don't know. Don't ask me, man. Ask Dan. Me with start sits, just out the door. Ask me any other aspect of fantasy except for start.
Philly isn't a particularly aggressive defense either. I mean, they're on the very much the right side of turnover differential earlier in the year, but they sit back and play cover two like most.
Over under is similar too. One's 41.5, the other one's 45 with Philly. So it's going to be a lower scoring game either way.
Champagne problems, guys. They're all going to be top
Champagne
five.
problems. Richmond problems.
They're going to be
guys. This has been awesome, man.
Last week we had Philly and Cleveland though, and We know
Oh,
the
don't
story
go
of
there.
that one. So.
Defensive performance of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah. On our
The
bench.
multiple defenses paying off. See, that's a good problem to have, guys. This has been a blast, guys. I'm gonna jump off and get set for the game. I'll be dropping this tonight, so it'll be fresh tomorrow morning in the podcast realm. But thanks for jumping on, guys. We'd love to get you guys back on maybe in the off season.
Would love
Love to do
to.
it. Thanks for
you
having
so
us.
much for
Thanks,
having us.
guys. Have a great
Good
night,
luck.
everybody.
Good luck in the fantasy streets.
You
Thanks, guys. You too, man.
Yep.
You too.
You too.
Take care.
Great having you guys.
See you at the table, Sean.
Yeah. See you there.